go ahead and share your screen whenever you're ready.
I will do that. And let's see.
Perfect.
Can you see it? Okay, good. Hi, agents. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Thank you for those of you that took time from your busy schedules to join today's meeting. I am going to try to make this as brief as possible. I'm not going to give you a long list of things to do, not to do. This is not the intention of this meeting. I just want to share some information and just some words of wisdom, okay? So with that said, remember this is part 1, so there is going to be a part 2 next month, okay? So I'm going to start with purchase agreements today. I have been reviewing purchase agreements and listings. Well, actually, I've been reviewing all the files, but there's a couple of things that I have noticed, and I just want that to make sure that we're on the same page here. I have a lot of people asking me, you know, what changes have you made, or is this something new, or is like, no, I haven't made any changes. Really, there's nothing new. I am just making sure that everything's filled out properly. Okay, let's begin with names on the contracts. And I apologize if some of this information sounds very like elementary to some of you, but because of some of the things that I have been running into, I have to go over it. Okay, so I apologize, but let's go ahead and go over the seller and buyer's name. So basically, every contract should have a seller and a buyer's name. Now, with the seller's name, I have been asked before if it's okay to have their seller, owner of record. Legally, yes, you can put their seller of record, but we really would prefer for you to write the names of the sellers, okay, on the contract. From what I understand, title companies don't like that. The way they see it is, you know, we have a lazy agent here, and now it's creating more work for them. That's what I've been told from a title company standpoint of view. However, I'm not saying that's the truth, but let's just go ahead and get into the habit of writing the seller's name and buyer's name. And every form should have the seller's name and buyer's name if there's a line there to fill in that information. I've been seeing a lot of addendums that do not have mostly buyer's name. They're missing the buyer's name. So we want to make sure that we are filling that in. Okay, now with the seller's name, if it is a business name, a corporation, LLC, please remember that you have to have an authorized signer of the LLC or the corporation sign and initial the documents. I have seen in the past where the agent did electronic signature, and the signature on the documents was the signature had the name of the LLC. It did not have the name of an individual. So please remember, if you are doing DigiSign, there is a spot there where you add a signer and you type in an individual's name. That way it would appear on the signature line. Their name would appear on the signature line. Next one is physical address and legal description. I have seen a lot of agents that have typed the contracts for whatever reason. I understand that sometimes technology can make your life easier, and sometimes it just makes it more difficult. So it's understandable if you have to handwrite a document, that's perfectly fine. Just keep in mind, please, to fill in all the information, such as the physical address and the legal description as well. Next item. So list of items that convey with the purchase, or list of items that do not convey with the purchase. And that is appliances. Most of the contracts, the appliances are built in. However, as you know, washer and dryer is one of them that is not included, is not on that list. So if that's the case, just make sure that you add there the washer and dryer. So what happens is when I am reviewing these documents in SkySlope, I open all the documents that you have uploaded, the purchase agreement, the tax record, I open the MLS sheet, and all the other addendums. So basically what I do is I go back and forth between documents, because I am here not only to make sure that you have completed the contract correctly, but I'm here also to see, hey, I want to make sure that they don't miss anything, right? Because if you miss something, I want you to be aware of it, and we need to correct it now rather than later, okay? So in the MLS, if it says washer and dryer are included and you don't put it in the purchase agreement, what's going to happen is I'm going to give you a call, and I'm going to say, hey, I noticed that the MLS said washer and dryer, you did not include it in the purchase agreement. If you say, okay, well, it's because the buyer really doesn't want it, well, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. However, I advise that you go back to the purchase agreement and you put it on there where it says items that are not included, because sometimes you say one thing and you mean something else, or people understand something else. So we want to make sure that the buyer knows that washer and dryer is not in the contract, because people change their minds, right? So let's say they told you, no, I really don't want it. And you're like, okay, great. Well, then later on, maybe they changed their mind. They didn't tell you, or maybe they did tell you. Next thing you know, now we have a problem over a washer and dryer, okay? And again, I'm just here to look out after you guys. So I want to make sure that come closing date, we don't have an issue over a washer and dryer, because I have seen buyers hold a closing hostage, okay? Because they want that washer and dryer. Maybe it wasn't in the contract, but they did want it. And you try to explain to them, well, it wasn't in the contract, which now is going to make you, the agent, if you're representing the buying side, is going to make you look bad. They're like, well, I'm not closing. Buyer says, I'm not closing because it says in the MLS washer and dryer. So what's going to happen is maybe the seller would say, well, you know what, let me just go ahead and give him a credit. But the seller may not be happy to give the buyer the credit, which, now there's an unhappy seller if we were representing the seller. And it looks like we're just, not providing good service. But make sure that you do include the washer and dryer. And again, if it is in the MLS and the buyer does not want it, just make sure you make a note of it in the contract as well, to avoid just further misunderstandings. Next one, name, address, and phone number of the escrow agent. So these three things are required on the purchase agreement. Okay, name, address, and phone number of the escrow agent. It is a Florida Administrative Code rule, and the in your screen there you can see the code number. You're more than welcome to copy it and look it up yourself. So basically, what I tell agents is, when you don't know who the escrow agent is because the seller is going to choose it or the buyer is going to choose it, I always say, okay, well, once everyone agrees to all the terms of the contract, you go back and you rewrite or make changes to the original offer, then go ahead and add it in at that time on the first page. If for some reason you forget, okay, to do this, and you upload all your documents into SkySlope. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make a note on there, and I'm going to say, please upload an addendum that shows the escrow agent's name, address, and phone number. Okay, and at that point, seller and buyer are going to sign it. I know a lot of agents say, well, you know, it doesn't make sense because we get a receipt of escrow from the escrow agent. And that's great. That's just saying that the buyer made the escrow deposit. It doesn't, again, the information needs to be on the contract. The name, address, and phone number, they need to be on the contract. Okay, it is required, and we get fined if we get audited as well. And I believe it's like a $500 fine. Okay, so please make sure that moving forward, we have the name, address, and phone number of the escrow agent on the first page of the contract. Next one, purchase price, deposit amount, and amount financed. Obviously, if there's some financing involved that applies, then I see a lot of agents who leave the amount financed out, either the amount financed or the percentage. It's fine, but make sure that you are filling that in as well. If you want to put at the end there for total amount to bring to closing balance, that's perfectly fine. But make sure that you have purchase price, deposit amount, and amount finance. And I'm going to go ahead and stop right here because, and just give you a little bit of information here, some words of wisdom, I should say. Sometimes if you are having to change the original offer and you're not rewriting it, you're just making changes to it, and you're having buyers and sellers initial the changes to make it more simplified. We have, especially in those areas where there's a lot of retirees, we have siblings that are trying to sell their parents' property. Sometimes you could have 2, sometimes you could have 3 sellers, 4 sellers, there's 4 siblings involved. So what I suggest is, rather than having them sign by the amount and having it all spread out throughout the area there, the space that you have there, I always tell agents, just draw a circle. And if you have, let's say, you know, only 2 buyers, just draw a line down the circle. That way you have, it gives you 2 spaces there for 2 initials. If you have 4, then just go ahead and do 1 line vertical and then 1 horizontal, and then you have 4 spaces there for 4 initials. That way it is easy for us here to review the contract, but also for the title company as well. We want to make sure that we're not missing any initials on the changes, okay? So if you could do that, that'll be great. Next one, check off which addendums are part of the contract. Depending on which board you belong to, it does have a checklist. The contract purchase agreement has a checklist of the addendums that you get actually attached to the contract. I look at those because if you select their appraisal contingency and I do not see that you uploaded an appraisal contingency, I will be calling you, asking you, hey, did you have the all the parties of the contract sign an appraisal contingency? Okay, because if you did, then you should be uploading the addendums to SkySlope. Okay, it is part of the contract and it should be uploaded. Remember, every form that you have, every document that you have, the seller and the buyer sign, it goes into SkySlope. It gets uploaded to SkySlope, okay, because it is part of the file. One other thing, initials and signatures of all parties. Going back to that, what I said originally about the buyer's and seller's name, make sure that if you're doing electronic signature, that you're getting the signature of an authorized party if it is an LLC or a corporation. Now, on the flip side, if the property is in the name of the LLC or the corporation, do not put on the contract the individual's name as a seller or as a buyer. I've seen that happen too. So we have, let's say, Mid-Atlantic Corporation is the seller. So Mid-Atlantic Corporation should be under the seller's name. And then you would have the individual, the authorized party of the corporation, sign an initial. Do not put the individual, the authorized signer of that corporation as the seller. That is incorrect. Okay, so we just want to make sure that we're getting the initials and signatures of all the parties and with the correct names as well. I am going to continue here with listing agreements. So with listing agreements, I want to start by saying that we are a transaction broker. Okay, we're not single agents. Please make sure that you are completing the transaction broker listing agreement. I've seen a lot of agents that are uploading the listing agreement that has both single agent and transaction broker. They have they fill out the single agent part, and then they do the transition. They complete the transition to transaction broker part. That is not necessary. If you were to just have them fill out the transaction broker listing agreement, that would be better. Okay, we are not a single agent, and also wanted to make sure that you understand if you are representing a relative, a good friend of yours, a neighbor, and you would like to represent them as a single agent, the agents do not have that ability to choose how they want to represent their family members or neighbors or their customer. We are a transaction broker. We are never going to be a single agent, okay? So please make sure you are filling out the proper listing agreement. With the seller's name, again, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but make sure that you are writing in the seller's name and not filling in broker of record, excuse me, owner of record. For broker name, I see agents for broker name write their names. I also see them write in AJI. Our trade name is Allison James Estates and Homes. That is the name that we are using, doing business as Allison James Estates and Homes. So for broker name, if you want to put in your name there / Allison James Estates and Homes, that would be fine. Okay, but just make sure that you just don't have your name, the agent's name, or AJI. Please write in Allison James Estates and Homes. Every listing agreement should have an address and a legal address as well, legal description, or yeah, legal address, sorry. I see agents put in there, see attached. I don't know what that means, see attached. So if you could please put in the address, type it in, write it in, the address and the legal address, that'll be great. Appliances, again, going back to the appliances or personal property. I look at the MLS sheet. So if you list appliances in the MLS and you do not list them in the listing agreement, I'm going to be making a note of it, and I am going to say, hey, you really need to list the appliances. in the listing agreement, okay? We need to be clear, and we do not want later on any issues over, you know, a refrigerator because it was not in the listing agreement, but it was in the MLS, and the seller later changed his mind. He decided to take the refrigerator with him, and now we have an issue over a refrigerator. So please make sure that you are listing the appliances in the listing agreement. And if there's any personal property, any items that do not convey, and you make a note of it in the MLS, please put it in the listing agreement as well. Because when I look at the MLS sheets and I say, oh, chandelier doesn't convey, but it wasn't in the listing agreement. Again, I am here to try to avoid, you know, headaches down the road. So I'm here to look out after you guys. And that's one of the ways I do it, because I want to make sure that everything is in writing and all parties are aware, okay? Total amount of commission. This is another one that I see. Agents for total amount of commission, they only put 3% because they are paying 3%, but in reality, they are charging 6% to the seller. They're paying 3% to the co-broke, but in reality, they're charging the seller the whole 6%. So make sure that if you are charging 6%, 5%, whatever it is, make sure it goes under the amount, the percentage of commission that you're charging the customer, the seller. If you are co-broke, if you're paying 3%, 2.5%, just make sure you put that in the proper lines as well. I see some contracts again that are missing seller signature. So here's another one I forgot to say. The property tax records. So when you upload the property tax records and I look at those, if there's two individuals on the property tax records and you only have one name on the listing agreement and only one signature, I'm going to be calling you because I see that there's two names on the tax records, but I only show one individual name in the listing agreement. Sometimes it's because one of them is deceased, or they did a quick claim deed and now it's just in the wife's name, now it's just in the husband's name. That's perfectly fine, but I would appreciate it if right next to tax records in the comment section, if you could just write in there, you know, only wife is on the listing agreement or only husband or whomever. Give me an explanation why the tax records that you uploaded does not match the listing agreement. Otherwise, I'm going to have to call you. There's been a couple of you that already have gotten that phone call. So if you would just make a note of that, that'll be great. And that way I know, okay, great. I understand why they did that, why there's a, you know, discrepancy. Agent's signature must be on the listing agreement, the agent's signature, and also the brokerage name, address, and phone number. I see a lot of agreements that do not have, especially, they'll have the brokerage name, but maybe not the address and the phone number. We want to make sure that our customers know how to get a hold of us if they need to, okay? So for that reason, if you could put that information on there, that'll be great. And lastly, date that you gave a copy to the seller, and the method, whether it was email, whether it was in person. Just let us know what method did you use, okay? That way, if we ever need to go back and reference it, we could say, okay, on this day, you received a copy via email or in person, okay? That is it for part 1. Part 2, I'm going to be going over addendums. I'll be going over seller's disclosure. And at this point, Tori, do we have any questions?
It doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but you guys know if you do have any questions or any questions come up at any time ever, you can always email or call Emily. Her email is flbroker@ajicorporate.com. So thank you everyone so much for joining us on this month's Florida Broker Roundtable. And of course, thank you to Emily for all of your wonderful insight and for putting together such a great topic and presentation. As Emily mentioned, next month, you can join us for part 2 of ensuring your files are in compliance, where Emily will be continuing on this topic. That will be on the first Monday of next month. In addition, we do have a lot of fun stuff coming up, so keep an eye out on your emails from corporate as well as from Emily on the fun events that we have coming up, and we may be coming to your area soon. So thanks again for joining, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.